I would like to now introduce our speaker. I quite often preside when Jeff is speaking. I must be a groupie, Jeff. I'm not sure what goes on there. Jeff McIntyre joined the chapel in April of 2018, and he's an active chapel member and supporter. He's retired military, a former IT director of the Bionetics Corporation, business owner and substance abuse counselor. He's currently employed at the Valley Community Service Board, working primarily with people with serious mental illness or substance use disorder. He's married to Pam McIntyre, who's also one of our chapel members, and she's a retired English teacher. They have 2 adult children and 1 grandchild together. Jeff perceives his life purpose to be inspiring and raising the expansion of human consciousness and the elimination of unnecessary human suffering. Jeff believes that freedom is the best and surest path for human advancement. And he says, quote, "Freedom is a manifestation of the highest levels of consciousness. Dependency is a manifestation of the lowest levels of consciousness." So please welcome me in joining Jeff to the virtual podium.
Yay. All right. Thank you. I love that song, by the way. All right. So today, the title of my teaching today is A Meditative Journey. And it's kind of an experiment of mine. It's not really about meditation. It's kind of about the journey I've taken in my life, in my thought life mostly, and where it's led me to and what the benefits have been. So anyway, you know, I was raised in a large family. I was the 5th in a line of 6 children. We had 3 adults living at our house, my parents and my grandmother. You know, we always had, you know, a gaggle of dogs and stuff. So my experience in childhood was kind of chaotic. I wouldn't say that I had a horrible childhood. I didn't. But we kind of had a family. Well, a lot of people can relate to this. I was kind of raised in a family where they said, you know, if you don't have something pleasant to say, don't say anything, which means you had 9 people in the household pressure cooking themselves. And of course, you know, at some point when you pressure cook yourself, you're going to explode. So with 3 adults and 6 children, there was always somebody exploding. So it was kind of a chaotic household. And very early in life, my first times in my life where I was actually aware of my own thinking was when I was probably 4 or 5 years old, and I would use fantasy to escape the chaos of my family. And I got really, really good at this. I would suspect I was maybe more prone to this than most people. And escapism at least for the early third of my life, I would say, was really a theme. And but you know, very early in life, I started to use fantasy to escape my external life. It wasn't really that long before I would say, you know, I can say that my thoughts betrayed me, you might say. In other words, what happened is instead of using positive fantasies to escape my physical reality, my thoughts kind of turned negative. And a lot of fear, fear of rejection, fear of failure. I was a very poor student, you know, from elementary school up to high school. I was one of those kids I was the original, the dog ate my homework guy. You know, I rarely did homework, so I was always you know, there's always tension and fear around that with me. I would lie about it, and then there would be fear and tension around that. And this affected my thought life. You know, I really started to suffer pretty early on. I'm thinking, early elementary school, from anxiety and depression. And anxiety, I just want to, to think about what anxiety is. Anxiety is kind of like worry, okay, where we project with our creative imagination, the same imagination I was using to escape from my chaotic family. We take that same creative imagination, we create a situation in the future, okay, and we worry, we have an emotional reaction to it right now. Fear, anxiety, etc. Sometimes even anger. Of course, I didn't realize till like 20 years later that those situations had never existed. Most of them never existed at all. So I was living my life in this series of emotional reactions to situations, to fantasy, to situations that never existed. And by the way, I work in the world of psychology, and that's kind of the definition of a delusion. So that's kind of the way I lived my life, in a delusion, and a lot of us do. So anyway, so I had this kind of evolution where instead of escaping into my thoughts, I had to actually escape from my thoughts. I really had a lot of racing thoughts, a lot of, like I said, anxiety, depression, fear. So like probably in my early teens, I started to do things externally to escape from this internal state of my thought life. Um, and I used all kinds of things. I used drugs and alcohol, uh, comfort eating, work. Actually, work is a big one for me. But it can be anything. It doesn't necessarily have to be professional work. It can just be sort of frantic housework. Work to escape. Of course, nowadays we have TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, all that stuff to help us escape. Um, but anything I could use to escape these kind of racing thoughts within my head, um, that's kind of what I did. Okay. Um, I started to experiment with meditation, and there's lots of other things going on in my life. I'm not going to say that meditation was the answer to everything. It was not. Um, I got sober through Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, and those programs are amazing, and they have lots of tools to use. But meditation was a huge part of the recovery from the states of mind. Um, so anyway, when I was a teenager, um, I first experimented with meditation because my older siblings were doing it, and even my mother was doing it. Um, and I guess in a way, I thought, or I was hoping that it would be another escape, you know, and because like I said, that's a theme in my life, in my early life, was escapism. Rather than facing things, I would run in various ways. Um, I was really trying to achieve freedom from my own mind. You know, um, by the way, I just heard a meditation joke, so I'm going to share it here. I thought about trying meditation because it's better than sitting around doing nothing. Anyway, so I started experimenting with meditation in my late teens, and got serious about it in my late 20s. Um, and at first it was like sitting, you know, inner peace, inner peace, inner peace, then dinner peace, and then dinner please, and then often into thoughts of food and all that stuff, and that's kind of the way my meditations went for a long time, is that I had a very uncontrolled and undisciplined mind. And the so as soon as I sat down, it took me years and years to get quiet. um Although, like I said, I wasn't really that serious about it until my late 20s. um and like I said, I kind of dabbled in it, but I also kind of thought of it as maybe another tool to escape this emotional chaos and racing thoughts and anxiety. Um, But eventually, I started to have moments of quiet. And this kind of grew. And one of the problems I have, and many of us have in America, in America, we are goal driven. We're ambitious. We think about things as success and failure, and uh, like I said, we're goal driven. So even with meditation, I was goal driven. I wanted to be like the best meditator that you can possibly be. I'll be the best meditator. If I'm meditating in a group, I'll be the best meditator in that group, um, whatever the hell that is. I don't, I had all kinds of things in mind about, creating this euphoria. If I experience this euphoria, then I'm successful in meditation or and actually I liked meditating in groups because if you're meditating alone, there's nobody to recognize how good you're doing it. That's how goal driven I was. You know, the and that's actually kind of a barrier to to actual meditation. It took me, and I had meditative, teachers in my life at that time that were telling me, no, 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 Jeff, it's not a goal. It's a practice. And if you do the practice, then you're 100% successful. And, I just didn't get that, you know. Um, I wanted the gold star, give me a gold star on my forehead or something. But what happened was an evolution which happened over years. And the actually one of the things that brought me and Pam together originally is because I was having experiences in meditation that really freaked me out. And I was able to get quiet. And there's a huge benefit of just being quiet. For one thing, you can learn to bring that quietness out into your life. you know so you can like walk into these chaotic work environments or family environments or whatever it is, and you can kind of be the eye of the storm. In other words, you're completely aware of what's going on, but it doesn't affect you because it doesn't affect you in the same way. It doesn't affect you emotionally, because you have this kind of inner pool of quiet that once you meditate enough to habitualize that, we can like walk out into our lives with that. And it comes and goes, just like everything else in life. But so anyway, so that was kind of the first benefit I saw of meditation, is to be able to experience this quiet and then sort of hang on to that quiet and take it out into life with me. And which kind of helps you stay in the moment too, which I'll talk about that in a second. But I was just saying that, I started having these experiences in meditation. Actually, when I stopped trying to achieve stuff, I started having these experiences. But one of these experiences, when I was sort of sitting in that quiet place, some people call that black velvet because it's just kind of all black and quiet. And I would just have this feeling where, we're normally like confined to this body, but I would have this feeling of expansion, off into this quiet blackness, and it just totally freaked me out. So I actually talked to Pam about it. And she said, "Oh, I know a bunch of people who do that kind of stuff." She introduced me to this group of Christian mystics. And they were a big part of our lives for the next, I don't know, 10, 15 years. But and it is just like most things in life, it's nice to have a mentor. It's nice to have people that are a little bit farther down the road than we are, that can say, "Oh yeah, I experienced that too. This is what, blah blah blah." It's okay. I'm just going to mention some things that have happened to me in meditation that are kind of, and like I said, these kind of occur if I approach meditation with no expectations and no goals and no that achievement, without that achievement oriented thing. it's then that I have the freedom to have these other kind of experiences, like visions and out of body experiences, and lots of other stuff that kind of gives us this sense or this knowledge that we exist beyond these bodies. And there's a lot of fear that drops once we understand that we are spiritual beings. We are perfectly created spiritual beings, and we exist beyond the body. A lot of the fear of life and a lot of the fear of death disappears, which is pretty awesome. The other thing is that with meditation, we're practicing living in the moment, and if we're in the moment, okay, there's a lot of things that only exist in the moment. Matter of fact, I only exist in the moment. Jeff McIntyre only exists in the moment. But God only exists in the moment. The truth only exists in the moment, etc. But there's also some things that don't exist in the moment. The future doesn't exist in the moment, and the past doesn't exist in the moment. So I had a lot, when I thought about the past, I usually felt guilt, shame, remorse, et cetera, those kind of things. It's very rare that I would remember the good things, the wonderful things in my past. It's almost always that I remember the negative. But if I'm in the moment, none of that exists. Okay, so I'm actually free to experience this moment without guilt, shame, remorse, etc. If I think about the future, that's where thinking about, anxiety and fear and sometimes even anger. And the irony there is it's anger about things that have never actually happened. But that also doesn't exist. And also that's another thing, and it's a quirk of evolution, I think, is that we don't usually think of the wonderful things that could happen in the future. We think of the things that we're scared of. And so that we create our anxiety and depression, etc. So in the moment, there's no future and there's no past, which means there's no guilt, shame, remorse. There's no anxiety, or etc. The things that hold us back. Okay. In other words, the things that held me back, the fears that held me back from doing what the next right thing, to taking the step forward, to professionally, personally, in relationships or whatever. You know, the things that hold me back are the fears that I create when I think about being rejected or being wrong or being a failure or any of those things, or being a success, because if you're successful, then people expect you to be successful and you have to sort of keep up that effort level. And that to me is scary. So I can have a fear of success just like I can the fear of failure. If we practice living in the moment, and just like the quiet thing that we carry out into our life, we can carry the sense of living in the moment out into our life. And it allows us to do a lot of things, okay? It allows us to be present with another human being or a group of human beings, okay? Present in the moment, with no agenda, with no expectations, with no all the old hatreds or resentments or all that stuff. We're free of all of that. We can be actually present with that actual other, which means that love can exist. It's pretty astounding. The key here is that that's not what we're trying to achieve in meditation. It's simply a side benefit. It's like we do meditation. Well, we do it for all different kinds of reasons. It's not really important why we do it. But if we do it, we're 100% successful. Even if we spend our whole time off in fantasy land, okay? The fact that we're sitting and breathing and bringing ourselves back to our breathing or whatever it is, whatever exercise we do, if we do it, we're 100% successful. It's not a matter of achievement. Okay. Another thing that living in the moment gives us is we can make constant choices, and we can choose the challenges in our life are new opportunities to express and grow. Okay, so instead of seeing a challenge in our life as a negative, as a barrier, we actually see it as an opportunity to grow and change and shape ourselves. And we won't be held, if we're living in the moment, we won't be held back by all those old stories that people told us. And my family wasn't any more brutal than any other family, but we definitely picked on each other and told each other. Yeah, actually, my older brothers and sisters told me for a couple of years that I was adopted. But anyway, all those old stories don't affect us if we're living in the moment, and we are free to do what we can. Okay, in other words, a lot of us live our lives doing what we have to do. Okay. I can move into a realm where I'm doing what I can do, okay, which is a lot more than what I have to do. And we can be much more productive, much more just create. We can create, whatever kind of life we want. That's one of the things that comes from living in the moment, is it opens up a huge creative space in front of us, okay, and we can create whatever kind of life and we want to, and we can use that creative imagination to envision the life we want and then live into that, and without getting into all the negative crap. Okay. So I started in a place where I used fantasy to escape my physical reality. That led me to a place where my negative thoughts and fantasies created anxiety and depression. So I had to do things to escape from my thought life. And of course, we're talking about, drugs, alcohol, comfort eating, work, and of course, YouTube, our phones. Um, it's amazing how compulsively we can just lift up our phone when we're getting some input that we don't want to deal with. um, so then I moved from that into meditation and the healing and peaceful way of life that creates, along with all the opportunities that it creates. So the last thing I want to say about my journey of meditation is just that it's a journey. My meditative journey is a journey. It is not a destination. Thank you.